What's going on with y'all, man? It's your boy J Money Pride, the Dreadlock Wizard. In this video, I'm going to be doing a masterclass on EQs. So I'm going to be basically going over the spectrum, going from the sub lows all the way to the inaudible highs. I'm going to basically be telling you guys the different types of terms that we use for those different categories. And I'm also lastly going to be going over the different band types to use and its uses. What is it used for? So you know how to confidently get on your EQ, whether it's the FabFilter Pro Q3, Kirchhoff, the stock ones that you use on your DAW, all of those things. You're gonna have full confidence no matter what EQ you use. We're gonna go over all of those. If you guys want more videos like this, be sure to subscribe, like, comment, turn on post notifications. Also follow me on Instagram and TikTok where I go over these things. And if you want to see me in real time do certain stuff, feel free to follow me on Twitch. I will have all of these things down in the description below, so you guys can see me on everything. Let's get right into it. So the first important thing that I want to bring up is the spectrum of the EQ. So with the spectrum of EQ, most of them will have a range from 20 hertz all the way up to 20 kilohertz or so. This is because the human ear can't pick up frequencies beyond 20 kilohertz, unlike certain animals. The EQ spectrum is broken down into 5 sections: the lows, low mids, mids, high mids, highs. The lows are the area where it's most haptic and rumble like, and can pick up on other frequencies that could potentially clash or affects the sub audio. For example, you may have bass, but you may have an instrument that also touches that same zone and that can clash with it, causing that odd rumbleness. Also in bass there is rumble, and if you don't have a subwoofer, you're probably not even going to hear it. Now there's some headphones out there that are pretty good that you can get relatively good response for the low end, but usually it's optimal having a subwoofer for those kind of applications to deal with it more precisely. And unless you're a skilled engineer, you're probably not even going to notice it anyway, whether you have headphones or not. It's just more prominent obviously with a subwoofer as it has larger drivers. And also this is an area, like I said, that you feel rather than hear. So usually having a subwoofer allows you to feel those vibrations even if you can't even hear it, whereas headphones doesn't really give you that opportunity, unfortunately. And this is why a lot of engineers will tell you just cut around 40 hertz to get rid of a lot of that sub bass. That way you can't really go wrong with any of your decision making. So yeah, so you can basically get away with it in your own way. But yeah, if you want to get more precise with the low end, I would highly suggest getting a subwoofer for those kind of applications. Next is the low mids. So the low mids is where you get some vocal characteristics, some instrument characteristics, and obviously some of the tail end of the, you know, bass or 808s that you're using for beats or whatever like that. You're going to get some of those pickups in the low mids. If EQ'd improperly, or if leveled improperly, or if you have a lot of things layered, you will get what's called muddiness in this range. In this range, you get muddiness. Muddiness is basically a term for describing how a bit of the bass's frequencies clash with other instruments or vocals, causing a ball of chaos in your overall mix. And you'll notice that a lot when you have layers of sounds within an arrangement. This can be this can be fixed by some basic panning to spread your layered instruments, vocals, or any of those things across the soundstage. And additionally, to EQ that low mid range, obviously, on troublesome causing instruments. And next is the most important, the mid section. So for the mid section, what makes it so important is that everything lives in the mid range. I know you've probably heard that term before, but it's super true. Everything lives in the mid range, man. So with that being said, whether what I'm talking right now, everything that I'm speaking has a bit of low, but obviously a lot is in the mid range. If I do taps, that's going to be mid range. If I were to type on the keyboard, you would hear that. That's in the mid range. If I play drums, there's frequencies that's in the mid range. If I play the piano, that would be played a lot in the mid range. If I had an 808, a lot of information, a lot of the characteristics that make that 808 sound the way it sounds is a lot of the energy that's embodied within the mid range. Vocals, everything is in the mid range. this is so important because usually you're so worried about things that are not in the mid-range. For example, you're trying to get your bass right, you're trying to get these things right. Mess with the mid-range and you can get perceived loudness, you can get better clarity within your 808s as well, without even potentially ruining the punchiness or adding unnecessary rumble to it because you think it sounds better, when in reality it's ruining things and taking up way too much space for other instruments to be in play. So obviously, with that being said, this can cause clashing as well, and this is what we call boxiness, and which basically makes everything sound very closed in, or basically lack of energy within the overall mix. However, if you mix properly in the mid-range, it can sound full of energy and can even assist you with gaining perceived loudness within that overall mix. This is why the mid-range is so important, man. If you can get perceived loudness, that can help during those masters, and that can help make your track sound louder than it actually is, because you're using an EQ to do maybe some minor boosts or cuts to get rid of certain elements that could be potentially putting a toll on your mix. Now, this section of the EQ can basically make or break the entire feel of the track, whereas with the low ends rumble, you can sometimes get away with a bit more bass. Keep in mind, nowadays anybody can run a studio with a laptop in a bedroom or a basement with zero acoustic treatment, so it's not as big of a deal as it may seem compared to the mid-range. But the good thing with the mid-range is that on practically every single system, whether it's a boombox, I use mix cubes, which is a little offset to the side of me, Bluetooth monitors or speakers like JBL pill speakers, all of those types of speakers, your phone, your AirPods, Beats headphones, all of those type of systems that you may listen to music from, all have mid-range. So it is good to use mid-range as a way of referencing your entire mix or master, because usually not everybody has a recording studio with a bunch of equipment and $500 speakers and $1,000 speakers and stuff. Not all of them have that, and high conversions and stuff. They might be playing this stuff on their AirPods, while they're, commuting and stuff like that. So having your mid-range together can oftentimes make the track sound a lot more louder within those systems that are usually smaller and more compact and more portable to take with you than it is coming out of a big subwoofer. So that's why worrying about the rumble isn't as necessary as you may think it is. In this section, it can also contain some resonances of certain instruments as well. So unless it's intentional, that in that case you can basically do a bit of removal for those type of things. Next is the high mids. In this range, it starts to get really resonant, but can also gain clarity if EQ'd properly. This area is a perfect assist for that mid-range energy, as it can add more fullness and richness to vocals or instrument. The problem with this area is that if EQ'd improperly, it could sound what we call nasally, which is obviously the opposite of clarity. And so, meaning this basically would sound like if you talk with holding your nose. You want to make sure when you EQ to work on the mid-range and the high mids to ensure that you have a clear but also a very energetic feel, unless you intentionally want your track to have a more dim sound. And then obviously the low mids, if you want to capture some more punch from the bass, and also a bit of the muddiness that you want to get reduced as much as possible, unless again it's intentional, because all of this is music is very subjective. So whatever it is you want to do artistically, go for it. No one's able to judge, and if they do, they're wrong, because you do what you want essentially. Now in this range, it also captures a bit of some of the high frequencies, which can be a bit sibilant, and some other resonances getting involved as well. So I think that wraps up the high mids. Lastly, you have the highs. The highs again captures super sibilant sounds all the way up until it's inaudible sound to the human ear. So dogs and other animals and stuff may be able to hear some of those frequencies, but it is like impossible for us to hear, and not everybody even has the full 20 kilohertz of hearing. So keep that in mind as well. Some people can't hear past 14 kilohertz or 15 kilohertz. So there's still a good range that not even all humans can hear. So this is why EQs usually stay within a range of 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. So you get just a round of rumble pickup, and then you get all the way up until you can't hear anymore, basically. Perfect for you to be able to make as many decisions as you want. And yeah, with the high frequency range, it can add to brightness of a track, but it can also include unwanted noise or analog noise that might be too loud. But if you EQ properly, you can get good breathiness, or adds to that clarity from the high mids. And so, for example, artists like Billie Eilish may use this kind of thing because she naturally sings with a soft tone, and so because of that, she might want more breathiness added to her vocals. And usually I hear a lot of breathiness in her vocals, so they probably do something along the lines of doing a high shelf band, which I will go over in like pretty much right now. The next thing we're gonna go over is bands. Now that we understand the range of frequencies, we need to understand what specific bands we use and why. Let's start off with the standard bell band. So the bell band is typically shaped like a U shape. You can narrow or widen the band to fit a select amount of frequencies. You can boost or cut those select frequencies as well. Using this band is good for making small, moderate boosts or cuts to those selected frequencies, mainly in any of the mids areas. Second up is the notch band. This band looks identical to the bell band. However, this is a cut only band, meaning this one cannot be boosted. You can only cut. This is typically applicable for resonances or unwanted sounds that you want out of your mix. You simply place a notch and it completely goes from wherever the point starts, which is usually at like 0, and it just cuts all the way out. So it's also U-shaped, except it's completely Xing out the signal that you have within that band. Next, you have the shelf band. This band is like a bell, but instead of boosting or cutting a select amount of frequencies within that U shape, if you have a low shelf band, based on where you sit that band and how deep or steep it is set to, you can basically cut or boost starting at where the band starts and back, meaning it'll affect the starting of where the band starts and basically moving in that direction. You can also do it with the other way. So you have a low shelf and a high shelf. The low shelf basically is, again, you're starting at a certain point on the EQ, wherever you set that band at, how high you want it to go or how low you want it to go, and you can either boost or cut, and wherever it starts, it's going to go that way all the way back into negative infinity, or high shelf into positive infinity. So you can boost or cut, doesn't matter. Next, you have your low cut or high cut. Low cut is basically a high pass, as some of you guys may know, and vice versa. A high cut is basically a low pass, and is exactly what it says in the name. It simply lets the low cut simply lets the highs pass and it cuts out the lows, and vice versa. The high cuts out the highs and lets the lows pass. That's all it is. So basically, again, you can use this if you want to cut out that rumble like I brought up earlier, or if you want to cut out some unwanted white noise or whatever that may be brought up at the high end of your recording. You can do those kind of things. And then that brings me to my last band type, which is basically your band pass, which I personally don't use for recording, but I would suggest that it's really good if you want to get a good understanding of how the mid-range sounds, as it will basically place a low cut and a high cut, and you can narrow it to only focus on the mid-range. And if you don't have a pair of mid-range type of speakers, I'd say that's a pretty good way to get an understanding of what you are supposed to be hearing. So that basically covers all the different band types. So again, you have bell, band pass, low cut, high cut, which is basically the same thing to just cut, and then you have your notch, and then you have high shelf and low shelf. So these different kinds of bands are very useful, and depending on what you may need to do, like for example, shelf EQs are shelf bands rather are really good for carving out some but not all characteristics of an instrument or vocal. A low cut or a high cut might take out completely, and that bells may end up picking up more things that you may not want, and then if it's too narrow, it might not pick up enough. and you might not be able to set a good ground for it, whereas you can do it really good with a shelf. So I personally like shelf EQ bands more, for depending on the type of stuff I use. Like I use flutes a lot, so it's very, I find it very useful for some of those type of elements. So yeah. Next is the types of placements of your bands. So you can do stereo, left, right, mid, or side. Now that we understand the band types, we can use it not only on the general stereo field, but also on these different types of sides. So if you don't want to affect the entire signal of, audio signal, it might be something that's a little more prominent on the left side as opposed to the right. Well, now you can use a left band and do all of those, use any of those bands that I brought up before, but instead of affecting the entire signal, the entire stereo signal, you can only affect just the left side or just the right side, or if it's any mid energy or just general side energy, you can affect those things separately, which I think helps with more precision based EQing rather than just doing the entire thing without really like caring too much about what you're doing, because that can destroy dynamics and can destroy the characteristics of an instrument or a vocal or whatever it is you're recording. There's different types of EQs. For the type of EQs, the more common type of EQ is the parametric EQ, where you get a visual of the spectrum and can add bands in yourself. Can move all across the platform, across the spectrum freely. Being able to solo and monitor a select band is useful as well. But you also have graphic EQs, dynamic EQs, semi-parametric EQs, and shelving EQs. So there's a lot of different ones you could choose from. So while each are unique and behave differently, graphic EQs have fixed frequency notches that allow you to boost or attenuate that selected band. This one is best for slight adjustments to round out the mix, as it maintains precision. Now, dynamic EQs have the ability of doing compressor-like band control, which my favorite EQ plugin, the FabFilter Pro Q3, also has. So with any band, you can pump the dynamics of that selected range, and you can control the attack, release, and threshold of the frequencies within the band. Then you have the semi-parametric EQ, which is a non-flexible, fully parametric EQ. This one is basically good, but will lack one or more features of a fully parametric EQ that like something that one would have, such as like your Q setting, which is basically your slope type, or like the how tense the curve is, things of that nature. Certain things may be just fixed and you can't change those settings. And then lastly, you have your shelving EQ, which is the most basic type of EQ. It is a shelf band only EQ. Sometimes it will have mid-range bell options as well, but it is known for its excellence in smooth, attenuated, or boosted frequencies. One of the well-known shelving type EQs is called the Pultec EQP1A. So some of you guys may know about this type of EQ and maybe didn't understand what it does. Some of you guys that probably paid the money, I assume you know that it is a shelving type of EQ. Because of its nature, it has a much different behavior than a typical parametric EQ that you may use, because it's not using the same band type unless you use a shelf. And even then, you'd have to probably merge a bit of that with the bell EQ to get the desired effect that the Pultec naturally has. Lastly, you have a multi-band EQ. We've went over basically every kind of EQ, but one is missing, and that one is the multi-band EQ. Now, using all of the things that I basically described and taught you guys throughout the video with the different, stereo, left, right, mid, side, the different types of EQs that you may be able to choose from, and also the band types as well, you'll be able to learn how pretty much instantly on the multi-band EQ how to work it, because it's nothing really different than a simple EQ. The only difference is that you have the ability to go in specific ranges and cut it off and create sections and EQ specific things and do compressing, or dynamics in those different sections. Do whatever you want to do in those different sections that you break off. So you have full control rather than EQing the entire signal. You can do that with compressors as well, because I did a video on compressors, but I didn't bring that up. You can have have multi-band compressors as well, where you can cut off different sections of the frequency spectrum and you can essentially compress specific things. If you only want to compress just the low end or just the mid-range without affecting anything else, multi-band is your choice. Same thing with the EQ. If you want to do specific things that's only affecting a small range, that's the way to go about it. So ultimately, the goal is to never use your eyes for your final decision in mixing. Honestly, not even throughout the whole thing in mixing, you know, throughout the whole process, because again, it is supposed to be an experience. It's supposed to be something that you feel, the artist feels, if it's your music, again, is what you feel. But again, this is a feeling. It is an art. It is not something that is just fixed all the time. You just gotta, you know what I'm saying? It's not one of those kind of things. So learn to use your ears and also learn to trust your decision making, because ultimately that's what's going to make you a better engineer or a better producer, is trusting what you do. And also another tip is that not everything needs to be fixed. Not everything is a problem in a mix. So yes, you want to basically go in with the idea that not everything needs to be fixed. If you hear issues, fix them. But not everything needs to be fixed. Some things are already good as is and just maybe need a bit more enhancement. So that's fine. And that's why you have the option to boost things as well as cut things. So remember that enhancing is also a part of the pot of mixing, not just troubleshooting. The bottom line is using all of this knowledge and practicing with these tools can make your mixes sound way better. And you will understand when, where, and why to use it for your own preferences. Mixing is an art. So be creative and don't be afraid to break some rules. I'm J Money Pride, and this has been a wonderful video explaining all the different types of EQs, the band types, all of those things, so you guys know what to do when it comes to mixing, producing, mastering, all of that stuff. And yeah, it's been fun. I will see you guys in the next video. Make sure to hit subscribe, like, comment, share, turn post notifications on, all that good stuff. And I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.